Hi everybody. I wanted to check in with part two video. I just completed the video for the seven deadly sins, and I wanted to now chat briefly about Pagliacci, which is the opera, the second opera that I recently saw. And I saw Pagliacci in combination with the seven deadly sins, and it's my understanding because they're both relatively short, and it's my understanding that the last 100 years or so, Pagliacci is usually performed with a different opera, which the name of that one is escaping me at the moment. Maybe I have it. Cavalleria Rusticana. Hope I pronounced that right. That's one thing I need to work on. I haven't been that into opera for all that long, and so if I'm gonna do videos and chat about the operas that I see, I really need to brush up on my opera languages because I seem to always be mispronouncing stuff. So apologies for mispronouncing that in Italian. But back to Pagliacci. So Pagliacci was, we saw the seven deadly sins, which I've already done a video on and spoke about, and then we had a brief intermission, and then it was to Pagliacci. So Pagliacci, I had never seen it or heard it, although I am aware of it because it's so sort of known in the culture. For one, it's got this very famous aria, and I wrote this down. It's another thing I can't probably pronounce correctly. Vesti la giubba, and it means put on the costume in English. And this is a very famous aria. I actually try to hum a few bars, but then you'd definitely see why I'm not an opera singer. I'm definitely an opera goer, not an opera singer, not an opera performer. But it's you would probably recognize it because it's been in a lot of other culture like movies and this sort of thing. It kind of goes. Dee, 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 dee. Okay, now you know why I'm not an opera singer. But anyway, it has that famous aria in it, and when I did a little reading on it, and apparently this opera was the very first first fully recorded opera that was ever put on recording when recorded sound came about 100 years or so ago. So I thought that was kind of cool too. So briefly, let me show you the playbill before I forget. So this is the playbill. You can see it there. I saw this October 9th at Virginia Opera, performed by Virginia Opera at George Mason University Concert Hall in Fairfax, Virginia. So October 9th, 2016 was the performance that I saw, and here is the cast. I'm not going to read out the whole cast just because of time, but it was a great. I thought it was a great cast for the first time for me to hear this opera live. I really enjoyed it. The conductor's Adam Turner, and the director was Katura Sticken. So. One note about the cast, though, in Pagliacci, the character, the soprano character that plays Netta in Pagliacci she sang Wendy in The Shining opera, which I saw last season performed by Minnesota Opera. It was like last May 2016. I was there for not the world premiere night, but the world premiere week for The Shining opera, and she sang Wendy, and I did a video on that if you'd like to check that out if you're interested in that. But on to Pagliacci. What it's about is Pagliacci means clowns, the clowns in English. And so it's actually a pretty straightforward and simple story that's got a lot of packs a lot of meaning in it, and it also packs a lot of really, 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 really great music in it. So the story's about this troupe of clowns, kind of a performing troupe, a comedy troupe, is rolls into this village to do a performance, and the performance that they do is a comedy where the main character Tonio, who's married to Netta, they perform a comedy where Netta is an unfaithful wife and Kanyo is sort of the husband that she's cheating on. And so the opera starts out where one of the other characters asks Kanyo, he says, I think Tonio is kind of sweet on Netta, so what about that? What about that compared to the play? And he says, like Kanyo says, like the play's not real. It's not real life. And so, in the play, it's sort of a joke, but in real life, I would basically mess that guy up, if I found out that it was true. Unbeknownst to him, though, Netta actually is seeing, another guy named Silvio. So Tonio actually is sweet on Netta, and he kind of tries to assault her basically one time. He kind of throws himself on her, and she kind of really has to fight him off. Fight him off. But she rebukes him, and that really, really, really makes him angry, and so he goes to Kanyo and says, Tonio actually then spies Netta with Silvio, and what Silvio and Netta are doing is making a plan to escape later that night. Well, Tonio, sort of sees this, he goes to Kanyo and says, what, this is true. Netta's actually seeing some guy, but I don't know who it was because I didn't see him because he ran away. Because once Netta and Silvio realized they were being observed, then Silvio, left. Well, so the town, is waiting for this play. So the play is going to occur after church. Everybody in the town's going to this Vesper service at the church because it's apparently some kind of festival. Maybe it's a church festival or something. And they all get out there ready for the play. Yay, we're ready. So they assemble. So the chorus is there as the audience of the play. And so the play proceeds, where Netta plays a character called Columbina, and she's, having sort of this affair, and their plan is to actually drug her husband, so they can have time as lovers. It's set as a comedy. And so the audience, finds it all very funny, and they're enjoying it. And then whenever her husband in the play appears, Pagliacci, which means the clown, actually does appear. He actually starts talking to Netta / Columbina, really, for real. Like, who is this person you're having an affair with and stuff. And so the crowd's like, because they still think it's a play. So ultimately, this whole sort of marital altercation transpires on the stage as if it were a play. So the chorus thinks they're watching a play. Ultimately, Netta realizes that he is not in the play anymore, and he is actually talking for real, and she refuses to give up the name of her lover. He winds up grabbing a knife and stabbing her. She spies Silvio in the audience, and she yells out, "Silvio, help me!" He rushes to her aid and is also killed by Kanyo. And then the last words of the opera are in Italian, but in English the translation is "the comedy is finished," is spoken at the very end. So, my thoughts, especially with compared to the opera, The Seven Deadly Sins, if you saw that video, is this idea of duality. So this is why I think that both these operas worked really well together, because they both really dealt with issues of duality, and they also dealt with women who are sort of trapped by circumstances and can't really seem to win no matter what they do. Because Netta, in this opera, we find out she actually, is in love with Silvio. She didn't necessarily love Kanyo. Kanyo actually, rescued her basically from being on the street, and so he feels like she owes him to stay with him. But she is with him and did wind up in the comedy troupe with him because he sort of saved her from that fate of being on the street. But at the same time, she was struggling to actually, find love for herself. And so there was that duality of right, wrong there. was it wrong to cheat on her husband, or is it right to find true love for herself? And then the duality of the real reality versus non unreality, which was the play. So there was that duality. And so I think that the two plays worked really, really super well together. And that idea of putting on the costume, that aria, that very famous aria that I, butchered earlier when I tried to sing it, that putting on the costume, that's like, that's a person and they're sort of needing to put on a mask or put on a costume for the world rather than shield their reality from the world, and the cost that entails. So I thought that this whole concept of duality between these two, I really enjoyed experiencing that, watching these two performances back to back, and Pagliacci is just it's just beautiful. I've since seeing this opera for the first time last weekend, I have listened to several different performances of it on Spotify and online, and the music of it is just musically, it's just a very beautiful experience. So if you haven't ever heard it, just keep in mind the story of what you're hearing if you don't know Italian, but take a walk through that music and have an experience with that, because I really enjoyed it. I guess I'll leave it at that. There's probably a lot more that I could say about it, but I think that describes kind of my experience with it pretty much. So until next time, I will see you soon, I hope. Bye.